Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good day, or good evening to you, depending on where you are joining us from today. Thank you for joining. My name is Eva, and I will be your host for today for our webinar on the Content REST API feature in Hippo CMS 10.2 to kickstart your app development. I'm glad to have you all here today. As some of you are dialing in, I will provide you with some housekeeping announcements, but before we get to that, I would just like to quickly introduce you to Hippo. For those of you who are new to Hippo, Hippo is on a mission to make the digital experience more personable for every visitor. We are redefining the CMS space by engineering the world's most advanced content performance platform, designed to help businesses understand their visitors, whether they are known or anonymous, and deliver the content they value in any context and on any device. Together with our global network of certified partners, Hippo serves a rapidly growing number of enterprise clients around the world and has headquarters in Amsterdam, Boston, and recently opened another office in Oldenburg, Germany. Before we start, some housekeeping. Today's webinar will last just under an hour, and we've got two Hippo presenters, or Hippo rock stars, as I'd like to call them. And yes, a recording to the webinar will be made available for you afterwards. In fact, you can visit the URL you're watching this webinar on today to see an on-demand version. You can share that with others, maybe embed it in a blog post, share it on Twitter or Facebook, and I hope that you do. Also, please use the rating system on your way out the door. Give it a 1 to 5 star rating for the quality of the webinar today. 1 being a low score and 5 being the highest. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please keep your questions coming by using the questions button in the webinar display panel. We will try to answer as many questions from the audience as possible within the time remaining. All right then, we are broadcasting today from the Hippo headquarters in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and I'm very proud to welcome our very own Mark Peerdeman and Oscar Scholten as our presenters today. Good afternoon to you both.
Hi Eva, great to be here.
Hi everybody.
So you two are going to talk about some really exciting stuff today, but before we get to that, let me just give you all a little bit of background on Mark and Oscar. So Mark heads up Hippo's product department and has over 20 years of experience in marketing and product management. He regularly shares his knowledge writing tech articles for several tech and marketing magazines, and is also a proud and active member of the leading Dutch digital rights organization Bits of Freedom. Oscar actually started as Hippo's first product manager and then switched to being a full-time developer as a member of the engineering platform team working on the core services of Hippo CMS. Together, they will discuss the functionality of the Content REST API in Hippo CMS 10.2 in detail, with Mark explaining how it fits into Hippo's multi-channel strategic product roadmap, and Oscar demonstrating how to easily develop an Angular application on top of this new API. So with that, I would like to start and hand it over to you, Mark.
Yeah, Eva, thank you very much for the great introduction, actually. And I will kick off today with a quick overview of what we call the hybrid content platform. A few months ago, we released our latest version, Hippo CMS 10.2, and one of the new features that we had was the new Content REST API. And that's where we'll talk about today, this new Content REST API. Actually, this REST API turns our product into a hybrid content platform. Well, in order to be able to explain this, I will need to start traveling with you. I will take you on a trip, and we will visit a small island. And this island will elaborate on what we mean and think of a hybrid content platform. So we see that people speak a lot lately about API first or headless CMSs, and most of the time these are used for rather isolated use cases. For instance, separate web applications or mobile applications or campaigns or mobile apps These are all separated, isolated use cases. The underlying cause of it is that often the CMS of duty that they have does not cater for these use cases. They are page-oriented, sometimes rather inflexible and monolithic. So actually, people choose for these headless CMSs because of the time to market and the use of implementations. These are the reasons actually for these companies to build a second headless silo in their company next to their existing infrastructure. Well, let's take a look at this situation. This is what you see. You have this great web content infrastructure, and they have built an extra silo, but of course, this extra silo does not cut it. Your customer needs a customer experience that feels the same, that looks the same, and of course, stays the same, no matter which digital touchpoint your customer chooses to engage with your brand. So actually, these separate silos are eventually blocking the cross-channel harmonization. Why? Well, first, low complexity for the developers. That's one of the reasons why they start building such a separate silo. It's very easy to use a headless CMS for a developer. But at the same time, for an architect, it's very hard to integrate this. It needs a lot of integration to get it running into your infrastructure. And how do you synchronize the content? This headless CMS, this separate silo contains content. Your own CMS contains content. So what about data going in between these islands? Do you have data integrity between those things? And we all know you start with one such a silo within the enterprise. Before you know, you have at least a dozen of them. So for the architecture, this is really a nightmare. For the editor, it's not nice either. They are using these CMSs every day. They are used to their standard content management system, and now they need to work with another one, and even another one, or another one. So they need to work with multiple systems. So you multiply the effort of the editor by introducing a new system. They need to learn it, but they don't want to learn new systems. They don't want to work with separate systems. They really want to focus on creating a compelling, creative experience for the customer instead of working with multiple systems. So this initial faster rollout that leads to an increased overhead in the infrastructure and an increased effort for the editors to create a good customer experience. And this is not only in the initial phase, but actually forever. Furthermore, people don't want to get involved in this complex infrastructure, including multiple systems. So actually they're trying to avoid it. So this multiple systems actually stops your innovation. We do it differently. At Hippo we say, well, we just use our existing Hippo digital experience platform, but provide an extra content REST API to directly approach the content via REST, so bypassing the web page rendering part. So this is easy for us because our technology stack really separates content from presentation. So the only thing we do is provide an extra REST interface to the same content. So this has lots of advantages, of course, you can imagine. First of all, your TCO, your total cost of ownership, is immediately very low. You don't need to buy additional licenses. You don't need additional training. You don't need additional hosting. And you don't have additional maintenance cost. Second, your editors will be very happy as well because they only have to enter this data once in one system where they know how to work with it. And third, of course, the most important thing, you guarantee consistent messaging because all content comes from the same source. There are no conflicts, no problems with synchronization, none of this. So this all leads to a very consistent, connected, and just a simply better customer experience. So actually, Hippo can offer one central platform for all these channels, regardless whether it's an Internet of Things, or a mobile application, or a remote display, or a whatever kind of smartwatch. And furthermore, we made it very easily. Oscar will explain how easy it is to use this. It's automatic. It does not use very complex Java programming, and it's easy to use. Well, before I give the word to Oscar, I will give some examples of customers of us who use this system. And one of them is, for instance, the International Card Services Organization. It's a credit card processing company, and they have used Hippo with REST APIs to provide a coherent presentation of their website, of the mobile app, and of the tablet app that they have. Content is shared. Furthermore, not only the content is shared, but also the AngularJS code is shared. So it means not only the content, but also the app is served from one single source, which is of course very interesting. Then we have IMA, which is a very big customer loyalty program company, and they have Nectar, and Nectar is a complete omni-channel environment also for desktop, for tablet, and for mobile phone. Everything is in the same style and shares the content, and is fully integrated with their back-end systems as well. Well, of course, like always, the Dutch police is very up to date with all this IT technology, and they went even further. They have a complete omni-channel strategy with a mobile app, with tablets and websites, and also even with a second screen application which synchronizes the very popular weekly program, which is called in Dutch Opsporing Verzocht, which means something like help us catch the thief. And the second screen application on tablet is synchronized and gives additional information. The mobile app is very extensive as well. It has Google Maps in there. It points to the closest police station. You can do all kinds of very neat stuff. All powered by Hippo via REST. Another one is Greets. Greets is a company where you can order presents and gifts online, and you can customize them, and it's a completely digitally transformed high-tech company, which also uses Hippo in several stages of their funneling and ordering, but also in applications. And in this way, they have a full REST-enabled content strategy as well. Well, I would like to leave it to these examples and give the word to Oscar, who will elaborate more in depth in how easy, convenient, and nice to use this application is.
Thank you, Mark. So today I'll be giving a short demo of the new Content REST API. What I'll do is I'll add the new Content REST API into a project and use that API to build up a small Angular app that displays the published content from our CMS. One of the advantages of our new Content REST API is that it is very easy to set up and doesn't require any Java coding whatsoever. So it's really easy to get started with, usable for any type of programmer. So let's get started. I'll first give you a bit of a tour of the project that I've set up and the CMS, and then I'll start diving into the actual coding. So people that are familiar with Hippo, they know that Hippo has a setup tool called Hippo Essentials. And using Hippo Essentials, I've created a small project that now contains the events, news, and simple content features. Those features I've added to have a little bit of a website and also some sample content. I'm running Hippo CMS 10.2, normal community edition, as you can see. And in there you find now a little bit of content, the example documents that I was talking earlier about. And well, we'll get to those in a minute once we start working out the Angular app. As part of this setup, we also have a website, but we won't be using that very much for this demo. So I've set this up to save a little bit of time, but what I will show you is how easy it now is to add the new Content REST API into your project. You simply go to the Tools section of the Setup tool, go to the REST Services Setup, and simply run it, and then it will give you the generic REST resources at a certain spot in your URL space. You can tweak this, but I won't do that for this presentation. So you just run the setup, and then it will give you some feedback that the REST setup tool has run successfully and that the API is now available. So let's have a quick look at what that API looks like. Here you go. I'm running in my browser a little plugin called JSON View that allows me to view the output of REST APIs. That allows me to view the JSON output of REST APIs a little easier. Provides for automatic indenting, capability to open and close certain sections, so it's just easy to navigate through it. I'll go into a bit more detail about this, about what everything is in a moment. And I'll now show you a little bit about how I've set up my Angular app. It's built up over a couple of files. I have my index.html that contains all of the frameworks that I'm pulling in. So I'm using Angular and Bootstrap for UI bits and pieces. I have one JavaScript file that contains the different controllers, and I've also already set up a little bit of routing. So I have a document list component, document list view and a document list controller that I'll use to display a list. And later on, I'll also add some more advanced functionality like searching and paging over that list. And I have a detail view and a detail controller that I'll use to display the details of a document. So let's get coding. What I first want to do is create an overview of the documents. I have already a documents list template, but it's empty for now. I've set it up so I have live reload of the files that I'm editing. So I have a preview here, and you'll see me switching back and forth all the time. So it says it's empty for now. Is it really? Oh yes, it's really. So anyway, let's get coding. First, let's have a little look at the output of this first resource, the documents list resource. It produces several status fields about the items that are in terms of counts, totals, etc. I'll go into more details about them when I'm discussing pagination. For now, the most important piece is this items array that has a list of all of the published documents in Hippo CMS. By default, the Content REST API only exposes published documents. So right now you see that there are in total 8 items in my result. And in my CMS, I actually have one document prepared that I'll be using for this demo. My webinar document that's currently not yet published. So I'll use that. It's currently offline. I'll publish it. And then when I refresh the output, it's immediately available as the first document. The list of documents is automatically sorted on date last published, the last published document listed on top. That's the most common case we reckoned. So let's get coding. Let's change the document list view so it actually displays that list of documents. I'll get started by first introducing a document service and use that to fetch the list of documents and put it on the scope and render it out in a template. So first, let's add that service. Let's call it documents service. We'll need two dependencies, the resource object and also the API prefix constant that I've introduced a little bit higher. So I'm going to be returning an object that contains a getList function. Which simply returns, it calls on this resource. I'll feed it the API prefix and then documents, get that. The API prefix is the prefix of the site of the amount of the API itself. And documents is the first resource that we've introduced in this REST API. So that's why I didn't put it in the prefix itself. So let's now start using this service in our controller here. And put the result of our function call to the scope. So that's it for the component part, and let's change the view as well. We'll render out a list for every list item in the result. Just a quick reminder, the result contains an items array, and in each item we have a published document with a name, an ID, and a link. For now, I'll just display the name. So we'll iterate over items in the document that we put on the scope, and we'll display the document name. And now our list should have been updated. Well, there you go. And we have now a list of all the documents that are published. Next step is creating some linking between the list overview and the document details. For that, I had already set up a little bit of routing. So when you request / you get the document listing. But when you provide a UUID into the routing mechanism, we can use that UUID to then fetch the details of another document. So let's start by updating our document list view and add that link to the add the link into this template here. And we'll just supply the document ID, which is the UUID of the document. And then in our in our document servers, we'll need to introduce an additional function to get the details of a document. that needs a single parameter, the UUID, and this returns something similar, API prefix, appended with the UUID. And now in our document detail controller, let's also use this document service and call it to fetch the details of a document. The UUID that is passed from the URL, we can get it from the route params and use that. So on the scope, we'll place the whole document itself, and then we'll have a quick look at what it looks like in the API, and then we'll populate the details. So when you look at the document, it contains basically two big sections. The first section is all of the sort of Hippo built-in properties that we expose, like again UUID, but also the name and the display name, and some status fields like publication date. In the items object, you find all the properties that are part of the Hippo content model. So in this case, for instance, we have a title field, introduction field, and rich text content field. And I'll use those three to display some details, and I'll also display this image at the end. Just as a introduction to the different links that you see here. Images are rendered in the Content REST API. They are the URL that is provided here. You can use that directly to fetch the image. The binary content. The URL that you get here for documents that are linked, those are links again into the API itself, and we'll get to that in a minute, how to handle those. So let's start populating the document detail template. Let's display the document display name as the start, display the summary, and then display the content. As you can see, the content itself contains, since it's a rich text field, contains all kinds of nice HTML markup. So we'll need to bind that into the div that I've just added. There we go. And from this object, I need to select the content sub field, as you can see here. And then last but not least, let's also add the image that's part of the document. And to render the image, I need to supply the URL that I can find here. So I need to add.link.url, and it should be good to go. Cool. Let's have a look. So our list has been updated with actually working links. And when I now go into my detailed document, I see the display name, the introduction seems to be missing. What was that? It's not called summary, it's called introduction. And there we go. The introduction piece, text, the rich content, and also a link. But this link is not yet working. Tell a little bit more about how we expose links in our content REST API's output. In the content, whenever there's a link, we don't know how the application that is consuming this REST API would like to use that link. And the application that's consuming this could be an Angular app, but it could also be a native app that wants to handle these links in a very different way than with regular HTML. So what we've done is we've separated those two out, and everywhere where a link is part of the content, such as here, we render out a data hippo link attribute in the anchor, and this attribute, the gastropoda news, points to a section in the links of the rich text object, and there you can find all the details of the object, including a link into the API again, where you can fetch the document. So using this information, we can then render out special links that work for your specific Angular app with the way that you have set up your routing. So you can do that by rewriting the content, or you could do that by putting up an event handler that does that in a different way. What I've done is I'll rewrite the output slightly. I'm not going to type in all this. I'll do the only bit of copy pasting, hopefully, in this demo. I'll explain this method in a bit. This resolves link method, what it does is it takes in the entire document, finds the Hippo content object, in there finds all the anchors that have a Hippo data link, and then for each of those links find the corresponding object in this links subobject, and then picks up the ID and create a link that works for our routing. So it's a similar link that we used in the documents overview, simply the hashbang with UUID attached to that. So let's use that, and I'll just add to the scope content field and call the resolve links with the response again. And in my document detail template, I'll just use the item we've just added to our scope. And now, when this page has been refreshed, there we go. Our links now work. You see the URI has been updated with the pattern that we used. So that's about it for the document detail page. I want to get back to the document list and add two more capabilities that the Content REST API exposes by default, namely searching over the content and also pagination. Both work using URL parameters. So if I go back here to the document overview, I can very easily search in these results by supplying a query parameter, and for instance, and search for all the documents that contain the word breakfast. And then you see immediately, whoop, well, only 2 documents in our little test set that have that text. And yeah, the output otherwise is the same. So let's integrate that into our small Angular app. I'll first start with the view and add a form here that passes its information into the controller. So let's add a form. That has a text input type, and I'll bind that to a to be introduced query variable in our scope, and of course a button to push. And now let's wire up the controller. But first, we of course need to update our function getList. It now needs to accept a parameter to do the actual query. Now that's super easy. I'll just pass in the parameter into the resource object. And I'll just update the controller here slightly by stating the initial query. And I need to modify this code so it gets called so that the search function that we introduced is actually there, and that so I'll just create a new function on the scope called update. Use the bit of implementation that I already had. Of course, passing the new query parameter in the scope. And last but not least, I need to call my update function to have a initial rendering. And now we should have a small search form, and it should be wired up so I can do the same searching as I did. Well, there you go. Next to simple keyword search, this search capability also supports some more advanced search operators. So for instance, you can search using ands and ors. To give an example, if I search for breakfast or workshop, you get 3 documents back. And just open these up real quickly. So some is talking about the workshop, another one is talking about just the workshop, and this one is talking about just breakfast. So then this one's talking about both breakfast and the workshop. Yes. So that explains why there are 3 answers. I can also search for using other search operators, and the support. It's only 1 document that contains both we just saw. But we also have a not operator that can come in handy every now and again. So if you use that, you can filter in a different way. Cool. So enough about search. One nice thing to know is that the Context REST API also has one more search function that I won't be going into as part of the application. That you can also filter the results based on document type. Won't be using that in this example, but might come in handy in your project. So the last thing that I want to show is pagination. I want to add a bit of pagination to this application, so you can, if your list of documents grows really big, you can just display the first 10 and we'll do infinite scrolling, or some other mechanism to fetch the next set. In this demo, I'll use the standard bootstrap pagination. So that's paging the old way, but it serves to do the demo real well. So let's first add that into the view. Go back to here and add the pagination. It requires quite a bit of items on the scope, which I'll introduce in a bit. Right, so that renders a nice pager, which doesn't work yet because we haven't wired it up. So let's adjust our document service and document list controller to use this new query capability. But let's first have a look at some of the details about this and the output of the document collection resource. It provides here a bunch of metadata about the search result. So first it gives you back the pagination parameters that were used. So we use an offset and a max to indicate, well, please give me back from the document number 0 the first 100 documents that you may have available. And then we get back some results. So the count actually is the count of the number of items in this items array. Total is the total number of items that are available in Hippo in total. So if you have, for instance, 5 pages of 100 items, count will be 100 and total will be 500. And the more field is something a little bit of sugar. So if you're doing infinite scrolling, you can easily check whether there are any more items after this page of results. So let's add those 2 additional query parameters. So we need a offset and a max, and provide and send that into our resource over here. And of course we need to adjust our controller to add some more items onto the scope. And we need to modify our update function. So we calculate the right offset, and that needs to go into our call to the backend. And then we pass all the right parameters in here. When we get back the result, the paging also needs to know the total number of items, so add that to the scope. And we get that from the totals, total attribute. And we need to supply a page updated function. And now our little pagination thingy should work. Now, we get 5 results. And when we click next, not much happens yet. Why doesn't anything happen yet? Probably, yep, I don't need a page updated, I need a page changed. And now the next works and previous works again as well. Cool. So with that, I'd like to do a short wrap up. So I've just given you a short tour of how you can create a small Angular app based on the output of the Content REST API. We've seen the 2 resources that this API exposes in action: the document list resource, which exposes all the published content in the Hippo CMS. We've walked through how you can use this API to do paging and keyword search. One thing we didn't see is the filtering on the document type, but you can read more about that in the online documentation. And also the document detail resource, which exposes all the properties of a Hippo document as defined in the content model. One thing we didn't go into is that if you modify your content model and introduce new properties or remove existing properties that are no longer needed, those changes are reflected immediately in the content API's output. Again, without having to do any recompiles or whatever. So it's really handy for local development. Last but not least, the documents detail resource also does pretty advanced content rewriting for links that are either cross-channel or that move from a link from a document that is exposed over the Content REST API to a document that might not be exposed or might be exposed over a different channel. So more about that again in the documentation. That's it from me. Eva, I'd like to hand it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Oscar. It is so great to see you live code like that. Really awesome. I think now is the time to open the Q&A session. Thank you all already for the questions you send in during the webinar. We have a little over 10 minutes left. If you have any additional comments, questions, or ideas, please use the question button or tweet us at OneHippo. So I will start right away with a question that came in during your presentation, Oscar. I believe this first one is for you. And the question is, what if I want to create more complex apps and the REST API does not have the capability? Can I use more advanced methods as well?
Yes, you can. The Content REST API is relatively new. It was developed for Hippo 10.2. But before Hippo 10.2, Hippo already had extensive capabilities for creating and managing REST APIs. So if the functionality that you're looking for is not in the Content REST API, you can always develop custom REST components. They do require a little bit of more work, especially in the development stages. But they do allow you, they give you all the flexibility that you may need, so you can then define your own resources, your own layouts of your responses. So that's a choice that you can make when you're setting up a new project. Do you want to use the generic Hippo supported Content REST API, or do you want to build your own that's maybe a little bit more tailored to your specific needs, but yeah, requires a little bit more effort? Right.
Okay, well, excellent. Then we have another question. I think this one is also for you, Oscar. So the question is, does this REST interface also function in high-performance clustered environments?
Yeah, excellent question. Yeah, it's a bit. I'll maybe repeat a little bit about what I said earlier. Hippo has had REST capabilities for a long time, and this new content REST API actually builds on the foundation elements that we've had in our stack for years. So it's built on the same CXF framework that we were using for the other REST APIs, and we're serving it all through the HST. And well, the HST is known to be very scalable and very flexible architecture. So yes, this can be run in a very high performance environment for sure.
Excellent. Then I think we'll go to the next question, which is, can I control what data is available and can be served over the REST API? I think that one's also for you.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Well, you can control it. It's controlled in two ways. First of all, the Hippo Content REST API only exposes the live content, so content that's actually published and also publishable. And secondly, one thing that I didn't show is since it's a component that's based on the HST itself, you can use all of the configuration capabilities of the HST as well. So you can limit, for instance, the content that is exposed over the Content REST API to specific subsections of your content tree. So if you want to have a little bit more advanced setup, you can, for instance, use the Content REST API to design a URL space that exposes, let's say, one section of your normal content over one URL, and then a second section over a slightly different URL, and a third section not at all. So using the standard HTTP mechanisms for that, you can actually create quite complex setups if you want to.
Great. All right. I think we have one more question. This question is, are you also planning to provide or enable analytics on this REST interface? Mark, maybe you can answer this one.
Well, that's indeed a very smart question. Because I did not elaborate on that one, we do have in our enterprise edition of the software, we have a feature called Trends. And Trends is a content performance and analytics solution, and it gives information about how much content is accessed and used by several groups as part of our relevance offering. And it's part of the stack. And well, what I did say is that this REST API is built on top of our stack. So yes, in principle, this analytics capabilities are available. We just didn't activate them yet, but we are planning to do so. So this is indeed a roadmap item, and we will, in one of the coming releases, we will activate this, and then you can really measure and have content analytics cross-channel over the channels that you are offering. Yes, so the answer is yes, we are planning to.
Very clear. Well, thank you both very much for presenting. I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, being mindful of your time, I have to unfortunately close this Q&A session for now. You have sent in more questions than we could answer right now. So what we'll do is we'll get back to you individually, answering the questions that you might have had. Of course, this isn't the end. Please check out the Hippo channel on BrightTalk for more videos, or get in touch with us through social media. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this webinar has been recorded and will be made available on demand on BrightTalk and on the Hippo website. Don't forget to leave a rating. We would appreciate your feedback on this webinar. And with that, I would like to thank you all for joining us today, and especially our presenters, Mark and Oscar, for sharing their expertise with us.
Well, it was enjoyable.
It was a pleasure.
Well, happy to hear that. Then I wish you all a great remaining Wednesday, and so long from Amsterdam.